Good morning, Vinyl community, Facebook people, YouTubers, whoever happens to be watching. It is me, James, coming back for episode 3 of various music collections. And I have decided today to do again something actually pretty epic and something that has been requested of me from a couple people. So I thought I would go ahead and take a suggestion this week and do something a little bit different. As you guys know, that my goal has been to try to keep the channel with good variety and to keep the channel interesting and do different things every week when I showcase these music collections that I have. So today is going to be, as you can probably see in the description box, because it's no secret anymore, I'm actually going to be showcasing my Paul McCartney vinyl. And I'm not going to show CDs, I'm not going to show cassettes, DVDs, things like that, because we would be here for a very long time if we did that. So I'm going to try to get through this as fast as I can, but also tell you a little bit of information about each album. And actually what I thought I would do is kind of kill two birds with one stone, if you will, and not only show you what I've got in Paul McCartney solo vinyl, won't be any Beatles in this one, but then also to do a ranking of my personal favorite albums of his throughout his entire career, with some exceptions. The exceptions are, I'll go through those in a minute, but I'm just going to focus on solo albums. Won't be classical, won't be live albums, won't be compilations and things of that nature, but I'm going to show you them real quick. And then we're going to get to a album ranking from least to best, if you will. And it's really hard for me. I mean, I struggled with this one, and I really almost changed my mind and said, yeah, I just can't do it, because, you know, ranking Paul McCartney solo albums is really, really difficult. And I've changed the list 4 times since I started this, and it's only been like 3 days since I decided to do this. It's really tough, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. I've seen at least 2 other videos of a similar nature. One from my very good friend James, who did a wonderful video. I'll put that in the description box so you can kind of compare our ranking, which is quite different actually. And then there was another one I watched a few months ago from a gentleman by the name of Mean Mr. Mayo. I'm sorry, I don't know your real name. As far as I know, you're not on Facebook. I've never seen you in the vinyl community portion of Facebook. But I do watch your videos, and I am a subscriber, and you know, if I recall, it was a decent ranking and informative video. So I'm piggybacking off of that. I had 2 requests to showcase my Paul McCartney vinyl, so that's part of the reason I'm doing this, and then also to go ahead and do my ranking as well. Quick shout out though, I wanted to give a shout out to a friend of mine who is the person, second person who requested this, and that is my friend Ross in Scotland. I can't remember exactly where you live, Ross. I think it's in Edinburgh or somewhere near there. But Ross is a great guy, has a very good YouTube channel. I'll put that also in the description box. It's also listed as one of my favorites on my YouTube channel, and he showcases a lot of Beatles, a lot of McCartney, and other things. He's also a huge Paul Simon fan, so if you guys like that sort of music, which I do, you know, you'll definitely want to check out his channel. So hello to you, Ross, out far away from me, and I hope you're doing well. I actually just chatted with you a minute ago, so I know you're doing fine. Okay, so with that said, I'm going to get right to it, because I've already wasted almost 4 minutes just chit-chatting. Not a lot to tell you about my life. It was just a typical, normal, you know, work week. I did some traveling, had a couple overnights, and everything went fine, other than I got a speeding ticket, so I gotta slow down. You know, who was it that said you can't drive 55? Sammy Hagar, I think it was. That is me, but anyway, life goes on, and I'll pay my fine. So, back to McCartney. Grew up on Paul McCartney like so many have. At my age, you know, he was a very important figure all through the 80s and 90s and 2000s and even till today. I mean, I just have never skipped a beat when it comes to Paul. And, you know, I've always considered him an idol, a hero, somebody I aspire to be like. I'm not a musician in any way, but I just have always looked up to him. You know, some people would say Lennon was better, George Harrison had better songs, better albums, but for me it's always been Paul. Paul is my favorite Beatle, and without a doubt, you know, the largest part of my solo Beatles record collection is Paul McCartney. So I thought, why not start with there? Start with something huge. So here we go. I'm just going to show you some things that are not part of the ranking, and then we're going to get to the ranking. So we'll start with just something silly I picked up. This is a press conference, and I think I've seen this before from other people. It happens to be on orange vinyl. It's just a press conference. Honestly, I don't think I've ever listened to this. It was just something for the collection, so there really isn't much to talk about on here other than it is on orange vinyl, and it's a great, cool picture of him. I think this was around the time of Flaming Pie, perhaps? No, not Flaming Pie. It was probably around Flowers of the Dirt time, because Linda's on it. One of these days I guess I'll listen to it, but it's just really for the collection. A single, I'm not a collector of 12-inch singles of Paul. I have one, and I guess I just bought it on a whim because I bought it here locally, and frankly, until recently I was going through some things with James Lack, my very good friend in the UK, and realized I had this, and I didn't even know I had it. This is a 12-inch single of Temporary Secretary when he did the archive of McCARTNEY 2. They released this, I guess it was more or less a promo single or something of that nature. So it's got 3 tracks on it: Blue Sway and Front Parlor, an unreleased version of Front Parlor. So it's cool to have. B-side is Check My Machine, Frozen Jap, unreleased version, and Sunshine Sometime, another it's instrumental version of that track. So yeah, it's cool. Again, I don't even know if I've ever played it. A couple other things that are very recent. I'm going to show this. It really isn't Paul McCartney, but I did pick up a copy of The Art of McCartney, the compilation that a variety of different artists contributed to. I believe it's Paul McCartney's band that plays on all the tracks on here, or at least most of the tracks. And, it's got folks from Heart, who does a couple great tracks on here: Jeff Lynne, Barry Gibb, Jamie Cullum, Bob Dylan, Billy Joel. A couple of these I don't even want to mention because they're horrific. Chrissie Hynde, Perry Farrell from Jane's Addiction, Owl City does a track. And honestly, it's fair at best. It's really just not that good. I did a complete review of this, from a whole review of this track by track that I did post in the Facebook page. It was very long, and frankly, it was a little bit negative because, honestly, this just isn't all that great. So they missed the mark on that one a little bit because they just did not stray from the originals whatsoever. So, it's more or less a copy of the exact version of the original track. So for me, it's just not that great. But what is great, and I just got this, 2 weeks ago now, is the new 12-inch single, Hope for the Future, which I really, really like. It's just got the one song on it, the original version of Hope for the Future, which Paul McCartney has done for a video game called Destiny. And I don't know anything about Destiny, and I don't know anything about video games, but I do love this song very much. And it has 4 different mixes of this song, and they're all really, really good and quite different. So I recommend you get this. It's just on standard black vinyl, very heavyweight. It's pressed in Germany for us in the US. And really great song. I don't know if many of you have heard this track or not. It doesn't look like it has charted anywhere. But one of the better songs I've heard from Paul in quite some time. So I highly recommend that. I gotta go quicker here. I do have a copy of Twin Freaks. That's not going to make my least to best. This just didn't count as a solo McCartney album, so just a nice 2 LP copy of Twin Freaks. Very good album. I highly recommend it. Some great songs on here, and in the effort of time I'm just going to bypass those, but I recommend you pick that up. It's not terribly expensive, and I don't know how long that will be in print. Compilations don't count in my rankings, so I'm just going to go through what I have on vinyl. Wings' Greatest, a very, very common, ordinary album that was released in the latter part of the 70s, I think. Perhaps right before his final album with Wings, or maybe the last album. Maybe this was the last thing that Wings ever put out. I'm not 100% sure of that. It looks like perhaps it was before Back to the Egg, but you guys know this, so there's no point in really talking about that. All the Best also I have on vinyl, nice copy of that. Always enjoyed this album very much, and it was my favorite Paul compilation album, until recently, well, somewhat recently anyway. Again, two LP set on that. But when they released this really overtook it for best compilation, and this is Wingspan. This is a, oh my gosh, 1, 2, 3, 4 LP set, and this is really, really brilliant. I've actually seen this fairly inexpensive in the US, maybe in the $40, $50, $60 range, which isn't too bad for a 4 LP set. But apparently in the UK it's terribly expensive and rare, and I don't know why. But it's a wonderful pressing. Some of the best versions, quality-wise, of these tracks I've ever heard. There's a CD version as well that I have, but the LP, the vinyl version, is just terrific. So this is my favorite McCartney compilation album by a long mile. A couple other things are not going to make the list. I've got to go quicker here. Is the classical albums. I don't have them all, but I have a couple of them. I have Ocean's Kingdom. It's sealed. I've never opened it, so I can't really say too much about this other than I hear it's good. And I'm not sure if I'll ever have the need or want to open this, but it's just great to have for the collection. Also have a sealed copy of Liverpool Oratorio that I'm going to show you real quick. Again, it's sealed. Can't talk about it too much because I just simply don't know this album, but it does come in a wonderful little box, and I believe it's just a single LP, but really wonderful packaging, and you know, it looks like it was very well done, so maybe at some point I'll feel the need to open that, but I'm not 100% sure. I actually got two versions of this next one. I'm going to go to live albums now because they're not going to count in the ranking either. Real quick, I'll just show you. I've got a full copy of Tripping the Life Fantastic. This is a 3 LP set of that tour, which I believe was done right around the time of Flowers in the Dirt as well. And I believe this is also the last time Linda toured with Paul before we lost Linda. So great to have that. Play that quite a lot. And I also have a sealed copy of the Highlights one. No real reason to open this because obviously all the same songs are on the full album. Just again for the collection, just nice to have that. A really, really good live album that is hard to find. And I'm so happy to have a UK copy of this, and that is Paula's Live. As you can see, it is made in England. It is a, let's see, double album. Great, great live album. I love it, and so happy to find one before the prices went through the roof. So thrilled to have that. I'm not counting in my ranking Unplugged, which is another fantastic album. He did this for MTV back in, I think, the late 80s. And it's got some great, great tracks on it, and of course they're stripped down, unplugged, just like you would expect them to be. And I'm probably not going to tell you guys anything you don't already know about these albums who are interested in Paul McCartney, but I'm happy to show you my collection because I'm proud of it, and you know, obviously Paul has been so important to me my entire life. And if I was including live albums, this in my ranking from top to bottom, you know, least to best, this would be number one. I gotta tell you, this is one of my favorite albums of all time. I grew up on this. I played it until the grooves wore out. I think I've had maybe 5 copies in my lifetime of this on vinyl, and that is Wings Over America. This is, I think, the peak of Paul McCartney's entire career, and a personal favorite of mine. I've heard some mixed opinions on Wings Over America, which I simply do not get, because there isn't a bad song on here. This is when he was... Wings really went to a different level, you know, with the couple albums that they toured around this, Venus and Mars and Speed of Sound, and it's fantastic. I would say that this has been my top 3 albums of all time, so if I was including live albums in my ranking, this would be a clear number 1, and I do have the recent archive edition of that on vinyl and CD, but it's a home run. And one of the greatest albums ever for me. I just cannot tell you how many times, as a boy, you know, teenager, or even prior, you know, that was my go-to album. You know, we were sitting around the house as kids. I have 4 siblings, and my parents, of course, at the time. Anybody who every time we played vinyl records, that always made the turntable, each and every time. So, Wings Over America, if for some reason, some miracle, you've never heard that, you got my endorsement on that. Okay, so let's get to the ranking. There's 25 albums that I'm including here, And again, you know, I'm doing a little piggybacking off a couple other people who have done something very similar. One person did just a top 10. I've seen a couple other top 24s or 25s. I'm including one that isn't necessarily a Paul solo album, but most people generally put it in a ranking, so I'm doing that as well. Tough thing to do. So again, if you see things on the bottom and you say, oh my god, I can't believe you put that far down or that far up, bear in mind that I'm the type of Paul fan that just doesn't really have too many bad things to say about any of his albums, with a couple of exceptions, and I'm going to get to those real early and get them out of the way. Okay, coming in at number 25 is an album that I just could never connect with. I have tried and tried, and I struggle. You know, one of the things I wanted to do here is talk about my top 3 songs on each album, and it's a struggle on this one to find 3 songs that I even like. And that number 25 is Driving Rain. This was released in 2001, and I think it may have been his last album on Parlophone before his new record deal. I'm happy to have it on vinyl, and I'm happy that it's part of my collection, and I have honestly given this a full effort to try to like some things on here, and it's tough. It's a depressing album. It's not fun to listen to. There's really hardly any good songs on it. If I had to pick a couple songs that I like, I do kind of like the title track, Driving Rain, just marginally. There's a song on there called Lonely Road that I kind of like, and a song called Magic that is decent. But frankly, this was a bomb, and this almost killed it for me for McCARTNey to say, I think I'm done buying new McCARTNey albums. But it gets better, and he has made a full recovery and comeback from that bomb. And I don't want to rag on Paul too much. You know, he has done so many, you know, out of 100% ranking, if you rank everything, you know, his entire catalog for me is like a 98. You know, so 98%, and there's like 2% that was just not good. You know, how can I be so critical? So I'm not going to stress too much the negativity, but that one, something has to be on the bottom, and that one for me is just the where it should be, on the bottom. Close on that one, and this is going to be no surprise either. This is the commonly referred to as the Russian album, Choppa BCCP. Again, I can't connect with this. I don't like the vocals. I don't like the songs that he picked. You know, it's just really Paul screaming down the mic. It was a very hurried album. I don't know if there was pressure from the record company or something he wanted to release for the Russian market for a tour. I don't know the history of this and why he decided to release it like this. It's very sloppy, kind of haphazard, and frankly, it's again hard to find songs on here that I like. There are 3 that I picked though. That's I'm in Love Again, It's Alright Mama, and Lucille are decent songs, but for the most part, it's pretty tough to put this on the turntable and enjoy it. So it doesn't make the rotation very frequently. Okay, coming in at number 23, and this may surprise a few people, and I know that my good friend James is going to be a little disappointed in the next couple, but I am personally not a huge fan of number 23, and maybe it will grow on me because I just recently opened this. I had kept it sealed for a very long time, but Kisses on the Bottom is my ranking number 23. This is a very atypical Paul McCartney album. He did some standards. I think it's not necessarily like a Rod Stewart American Songbook thing, because some of these are not American songs, but it was his attempt to do something like that, and he did write a couple tracks for it, and others are covers. The track My Valentine is quite good, and that is one of my top 3 songs. This was released in 2012. Bye Bye Blackbird is a real good song, and Get Yourself Another Fool. I like that song. Haven't given this a tremendous amount of time, and that's perhaps why it is low on my list, and it could change. You know, I'm going to say that many times throughout this video that it could change. So Kisses on the Bottom is number 23. Number 22 is probably also going to be disappointing to James and maybe some others that say I don't get your ranking, but for me, I could never connect with this album. It just never really had the appeal and the great song selection that many of the other Wings album did. Number 22 is 1973's Red Rose Speedway. Again, I just never really got this album. I think even though there is one song on it that may be one of Paul's best songs ever, you know, we're talking about albums here, and as albums go, this one's got a lot of filler for me. And I do like Big Barn Bed, and I do like a track on here called Little Lamb Dragonfly. And of course, the classic Paul McCartney song My Love, which is one of the greatest songs that he's ever written, is on this album, but unfortunately everything else on it for me is again kind of filler, and it just doesn't resonate very well with me. So sorry to say that one is down number 22. Number 21 is 1999's Run Devil Run, another attempt by Paul to kind of reclaim his rock and roll roots and do a lot of cover songs. This was kind of around the time that Linda had passed away, and I think he was trying to cheer himself up, or you know, get back into just rock and roll and focusing on music. And frankly, it just doesn't work as well as it could have. I would love to see Paul at some point do a compilation album of classic rock and roll tracks and do it right. And in my opinion, he still hasn't done that. So that came in at number 21, Run Devil Run, 1999. I do like Brown Eyed Handsome Man, the Elvis track All Shook Up, and What It Is. Those are decent, and it is a lot better than the Russian album. It's a huge improvement from that, but still, it's not what it needed to be. Okay, coming in at number 20 is 1986's Press to Play. Not a very popular album in the world of Paul McCartney. I know this is generally hated, and I personally think that it is hated on a little bit too much. This is not a bad album, and really the top 20 now, we're talking about albums that I generally do like. This has some really good songs on it. I mean, I like the song Stranglehold. Sun's Coming Up, Talk More Talk is a little quirky and different. Footprints is a beautiful song, and it followed up by Only Love Remains, so the A-side is quite good. The title track, Press, or sort of the title track, and then you kind of lose it on the last 4 tracks a little bit. But overall, you know, this is probably 6, 7 out of 10 for me. It is not a bad album. Actually, I personally like the cover. I like these classic old Kodak sepia type print. And yes, I agree, it doesn't really have anything to do with the album, but it's a beautiful, beautiful picture. And I think it's a little bit ragged on, if you want my honest opinion. Okay, number 19. And I'm ranking this down towards the bottom, I guess you could say, because I just frankly don't know it that much. And that is 2008's Electric Arguments. I got to admit, I haven't played this all that much. The couple times I have put it on the turntable, I've enjoyed it. And I've got a couple songs that stood out to me. Let's see, they're upside down here. But the first track is very good, and I can hear it in my head, Nothing Too Much, Just Out of Sight is a really good song. So I'm just going to kind of gloss over this and say I've got to do my homework better on Electric Arguments, and perhaps in a future list it will be a little bit higher. Number 18 is a album that I was so excited for, and so excited to, you know, I was working in a mall at the time. I was just I think I was about 17 years old when this came out. And I was so excited for it, and it was honestly a little bit of a letdown. Went to see the film at the theater, and it was even more of a letdown because it was a stinker, a quirky, weird film that I just never understood what he was trying to accomplish in this one, but is 1984's Give My Regards to Broad Street. So that came in at number 18. Isn't a lot of songs on here I can talk about because it's just remade versions of his older songs, Paul McCartney's own older songs, or Beatles songs. And they're quite good, not as good as the originals, frankly. They're very orchestrated and theatrical. But there is the song No More Lonely Nights on here that was a big hit and a top 10 single in the U.S. And I love that song. Absolutely adore that song. So, you know, it's not bad. And it's got a version, track 6, of Wanderlust on it. And Wanderlust, I'm going to save my commentary on Wanderlust because you'll see that later on higher up in the ranking, and I'm going to talk about that, but that's another reason why that is maybe not as far down on the list as some. Number 17 is a very disappointing album for me in many levels because it followed up one of the greatest albums for me in his entire repertoire, and that is Pipes of Peace. This came out in 1983, just a year after Tug of War, and of course, you know, kind of a play on words, Tug of War, Pipes of Peace. I do love that picture of Paul. It's not a bad album. It's got some good songs on it, and I do think that generally it's a little bit underrated. And I am looking forward to the archive issue of that coming out in 2015. They're doing the archive of this and Tug of War, so I'm interested to see what the bonus tracks will be and some of the songs that I you know, get a remaster and maybe some new life. Favorite tracks on this one is the title track, without a doubt, is the best song on the album, Pipes of Peace. So Bad, I like his falsetto on that. I think it's a great song, honestly, and something quite different for Paul. And Through Our Love is a beautiful song. So, good album, really. I'd give it another try if you haven't spun this one in a while. I think it's kind of underrated. Okay, number 16. We're getting into some good stuff here. 1993. If you guys know your chronological order of Paul, you know what's coming up. And I do like this album quite a lot. And it's kind of made it up and down the list several times for me. And right now it's kind of middle of the road, I suppose. But that is 1993's Off the Ground. It's overall a very solid album. And it was one of his least successful albums, to be honest with you. Don't know why, frankly. I think it's underrated, and it was just that time in the early 90s when Paul's sales were just not as strong as they had been in the past. And, you know, it's a very solid album. Off the Ground, Hope of Deliverance, I Owe It All to You are my three standout tracks on this album, but there are many others that I could have listed, and I think that it's an underrated gem, so check that out. Okay, let's see. We're going into the top 15 here. Now coming in at number 15 is a very early album, 1971's Wildlife. And this one is another one of those albums that's kind of up and down and all over the place and bits and pieces and a little quirky, and I wasn't quite sure what they were trying to accomplish. I actually personally bought this many years after I'd gotten many other Wings albums. And you know, for me it was like, well, wow, what were they thinking on this one? But it's grown on me over the years, and I think that it's kind of gotten a new life and a better appreciation through the years. Standout tracks on this one are Some People Never Know. I do like the track Bip Bop, even though it's silly and simple and, you know, seems like it could have been done in, you know, 5 minutes. And the title track, again, Wildlife, is good. So check it out. You know, if you haven't heard Wildlife in a long time, I think it would be worth spinning again. Okay, coming in at number 14 is, this is tough for me because I really, really like this album. And this is 1980's, the first album post-Wings, McCartney 2. Very different. You can certainly see that he wanted to do everything himself. You know, maybe he was tired of being in a band. Maybe he was ready for change. This is him tinkering around with a lot of different sounds. Yeah, you know, it's just quirky and different. And, of course, the song that was a big hit on here is coming up. But I personally love the song Waterfalls. His vocals on Waterfalls are among his finest vocals ever. One of the best songs he's written, in my opinion, and that song gives me chills to this day. Every time I hear that track, see the video, or hear it in any capacity, I just love that track. I also really like the song Temporary Secretary. No idea what he's trying to say in that song, but it's just a song that makes me laugh. So, yeah, 1980, first post-Wings album, good effort by Paul. And again, it didn't particularly do well on the charts other than the single coming up, but I think that that was a great reissue, by the way, too. That archive sounds brilliant compared to the original. And I didn't pull out some of these originals, but okay, let's see, number 13. This is one of my favorites. I guess I'm only at 13 and I'm saying it's my favorites, but I jokingly told James yesterday, I said I think from 14 to 1 it's a tie. Kind of kidding, but kind of not, because it's really hard, is 1978's London Town. In many ways, this is one of the best Wings albums because it's mellow, it's cool, it's got a real English feel to it, even though it wasn't recorded in London or anywhere in the UK or Europe. But I love I'm Carrying. I love the song With a Little Luck. I remember reading in Rolling Stone at the time that this was the #1 single, and they were commenting on With a Little Luck, and they labeled it pop fluff. And I thought, well, that sounds insulting, but yeah, it's kind of a poppy, fluffy song. Very airy, breezy, light song, and 1978's London Town. Do like the title track, and you know, Morris Moose and the Grey Goose, well, who knows? He must have been smoking something there. Okay, so number 12. We're getting into some really good stuff here. This was a bit of a comeback for Paul, if you will, especially in the UK. Number 12 is 1989's Flowers in the Dirt. Really, really liked this album at one time, and I was so excited when it got some good airplay here in the US, and it had some good hit singles because he was really overdue. And this one is a winner. He toured on this album, and it was fantastically done. Favorite tracks on here, Put It There, love that song. It's just a great little song about friendship and father-son relationships and stuff like that. Figure of Eight, great rockin' track. And My Brave Face, the single on that, is very good. But there's a lot of other good songs on here too. I'm just glossing over how good this album is. So if you haven't got Flowers in the Dirt yet, that's highly recommended by me. Okay, so where are we here? We're up to number 11, almost in the top 10 now. So it's getting harder and harder. So for me, number 11 is going to be 2007's Memory Almost Full. Didn't quite make the top 10, but it probably could in the future. Great album. There's really not any bad songs on it. I think it was a very complete album and something that he's proud of, and I'm proud to own it because it's getting a little bit hard to find. Let's see here, favorite tracks. Memory Almost Full is Ever Present Past is a great track. That Was Me, and Dance Tonight, the single and video on that one's really fun. So in the effort of time, I'm just going to leave it at that and let you guys check out Memory Almost Full because it's very, very good. Okay, so here we go with the top 10. I've got to go just as fast as humanly possible here because I'm over 30 minutes already. Number 10 is the debut post-Beatles album, 1970s McCartney. And in many ways, some people think this is his best work, and some people say it's a mess. So, you know, whatever your opinion is, I can only give you mine, and my opinion is it's a top 10 album. It's got some great tracks on it and some filler. You know, it's got some stuff that, you know, you just didn't quite sound happy. And it was a tough time. You know, all the early solo albums by the Beatles are different, and, you know, it's hard. You know, how do you follow up the Beatles? But this is an album that came out very, very quickly after they decided they were going to call it quits. I think it was a shock to the rest of the Beatles, and it was his statement to say, we're done. The Lovely Linda, boy, Junk is a great song. And of course, it's got the classic song, one of his best songs ever written, Maybe I'm Amazed. That song is, well, what can you say? You know, it's just one of those songs that is every bit as good as Hey Jude and every bit as good as any Beatles track, in my opinion. Number 9 is 1979's Back to the Egg. Very, very underrated album. This didn't fare so well, and maybe part of the reason Wings called it quits after this album, not sure, but they did have some lineup problems. They couldn't seem to keep band members other than Denny Lane. A couple of these guys decided they didn't want to tour anymore, and I think that was also part of the reason that Wings folded up. And the fact that I think they had run its course. You know, they accomplished what they wanted, and it looks like this is actually a promo copy. I didn't even realize it until I see it on camera. So, yeah, great album. It's a rockin' album. It's a little bit heavy, and it's good. I like it when Paul jams out and he gets his rock on. So, Arrow Right Through Me is a terrific song. That one isn't a rocker, but wow, what a great track. And so many great guests on this one, on that rockestra theme. You know, I think they maybe didn't quite, you know, fulfill what that was all supposed to be about, but they had some fantastic people playing in that orchestra, they called it at the time, for this album. I would have loved to have seen them, you know, maybe the bonus tracks, when they do an archive of this, will include some more of those sessions, because they were great. Back to the Egg, 1979, Last Wings album, number 9. So check that out if you haven't played it recently. Okay, number 8. This is tough because we're getting into some really stiff competition here, but I'm going to rate this number 8. This is his latest album, New. It could go higher, could fall down, but, you know, it's still new, obviously. I've only had it about, I guess about a year. And, you know, it takes time sometimes with Paul albums to fulfill all the needs and all you know, when you got a catalog like this, it's really tough. It takes time for you to say, you know, how over time is it going to rank in the series of albums that he's put out, but it's solid as a rock. You know, if this happened to be Paul's final album, which, you know, I'm sure it won't be, but this would be a great kind of end to it all. Wish that would have been the cover, honestly. I like the back cover more than the front. It just pops more. Great songs on here from Queenie Eye, Save Us, On My Way to Work, and the great track and brilliant video, maybe the best video he's ever made, from Appreciate. So if you haven't seen the video for Appreciate, I might put that in the description box as well, because it is fantastic. Okay, number 7, 1997's Flaming Pie. But just a fantastic album. Really isn't a bad song on here. This was a fantastic effort by Paul. And if you haven't heard Flaming Pie, if you gave up on Paul McCartney a while ago like many did, do yourself a favor and check out Flaming Pie, because it is fantastic. My favorite 3 tracks on here are The World Tonight, Really Love You, and Young Boy. But really, there's 14 songs on here, and I could have put any of them on there with no hesitation. Okay, number 6 is the album's predecessor to Flaming Pie, and that is 2005's Chaos and Creation in the Backyard. Another, 2 albums in a row where Paul was just on fire. After Driving Rain, I guess maybe he said, I better get my shit together or something. But this and Flaming Pie are kind of equal as far as I'm concerned. They're both excellent, excellent albums. And so happy to have this on vinyl, because it's gotten so ridiculously expensive and hard to find. I really covet it and cherish this, and honestly I play my CD most of the time because I don't want to mess up my vinyl. I'm sure it'll get reissued and all those that want it can have it, but I bought this at a good time and didn't pay a lot for it, so I'm very, very lucky. Alright, so top 5. How do you rank Paul McCartney's best 5 albums ever? But you gotta do it, and something's gotta be 5 and something's gotta be 1. So for me, number 5 is 1975's Venus and Mars. I'm going to show you the archive copy of it because it is spectacular. This is an album that definitely needed to be remastered, and they did a brilliant job. Every song on here is a classic. I'm not going to go through them. You guys know this album. It is as good as it gets, and every bit as good as anything I think the Beatles put out, in my opinion. I'm entitled to my opinion. And I love it, from top to bottom. It is fantastic. Okay, number 4, you guys are probably wondering, what is he doing here? But, it's hard. I can't deny how much I struggled with this. But number 4 for me is Speed of Sound, the album from 1976. So you can see 75, 76, and then of course you remember my love of Wings Over America. This was a very peak period for Wings, and my favorite era of Paul McCartney, period. And this is a classic album for me. Again, one of those albums I played until I just couldn't play it anymore. And then, they released the archive and you get to love it all over again. The only thing I'll mention on this album that maybe you aren't aware of if you haven't picked up the archive is there's a B-side, or on the bonus tracks, there's an alternative version of Beware My Love with John Bonham on drums. And it is killer. Oh my God, John Bonham. If you ever doubted why Led Zeppelin called him the greatest drummer of all time, that track will tell you. I mean, it changes everything, and it's even better. As if it wasn't good enough on the album, it's even better with the John Bonham version. So check that out, CD or vinyl or stream it or something. Okay, here we go with the top 3. Really, really hard, and I'm just going to get right to it. For me, right now, at this time, number 3 is 1971's Ram. Brilliant album. Many, many people say this is his finest album, his best work, and I can't disagree with it too much. It just, at this moment, while I'm making this video, it fell to number 3, and there's really no reason for it other than what I'm going to tell you about my number 2. So, what can I say? It is what it is. It's a great album, and it's so sad to know that it was absolutely murdered and trashed when it came out. The critics hated it, and to this day, I'll never understand it because now it's revered as one of the greatest albums ever. Okay, so, and I just wanted to show you, I do have a mono copy that was released around the same time of as the archive. I just recently got this, and it sounds really, really good on mono. There's just nothing to the packaging, just stripped down and plain. It is numbered, but the numbers are on the inside on the label. Okay, number 2 and number 1. You're probably thinking, this James character, he's nuts. But for me, number 2, and I love this album, and I've loved it since the day it came out. It resonated with me like no other album, really, by Paul. And it was so refreshing and so necessary for me to get this and see how good it is. And that is 1982's Tug of War. It is, for me, really, in a way, his finest moment. As a solo artist, without a band anyway, this is his finest moment. And it has that track Wanderlust on it, which I personally feel is his best song he's ever written after the Beatles. I love that song. I love the lyrics. I love everything about it. It is, you know, this is the album, the second album he released after Wings. I was nervous. I was scared. I was wondering where he's going to go. He went with McCartney too, and it was different and quirky. I'm like, oh God, you know. But this home run album, every song on here is brilliant. I just can't. I can't tell you how much I love this album, and I know for a lot of you it ranks down in the you know, the 20s and 30s, you know, 20, 25 or whatever. But for me, it's just one of his best albums, and I love it, and I've played it more than any other than Wings Over America. So this album's got a lot of love from me, so I'll leave it at that. And then, of course, there's no mystery what number one is, and you think, okay, well, that's so ordinary and so common and so predictable, but I don't care. It is 1973's Band on the Run, the number one album. My favorite Paul McCartney album, and every time I try to say it's not my favorite Paul McCartney album, it just doesn't feel right. You know, it just, you know, it's like, well, who are you kidding? It is, you know, what can you say? This is what made Wings Wings. This is what made put Paul McCartney on the map as a solo artist after the Beatles. Every song on here is brilliant and a genius. So, you know, I don't care. If it's the most common choice and the most predictable, so be it. And I'm perfectly fine with that. So there you have it, guys. There's my Paul McCartney ranking. Very hard to do. I'm already thinking in my mind, maybe I should have changed this, that, or the other. So who knows? I'll probably do another one here before too long. I hope you enjoyed it. There was a lot, and I'm sorry I went on so long. It's going to be about 42 minutes, but I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll be doing another one here soon. Hopefully the next one won't be as difficult and as epic as this, but I did have fun with it, and I hope you did too. So have a great weekend, vinyl community and Facebook and YouTubers, and we'll catch up with you real soon. Take care. Bye now.